Hello, I'm Tyler, this is the Imaginary Axis, and does anyone here remember the 1800s? No, of course you don't. In fact, nobody remembers the 1800s. Everybody who once could is dead. Well, not everybody. There is actually a small chance that someone's watching this video right now who was alive in the 1800s as a baby, but that chance is so small it actually looks like this. Or 1 in roughly 7,500,000,000. Emma Morano is the only person alive today who stepped foot in the 1800s. She's 117 years old and the last confirmed survivor of the 19th century. Our final link to the century that constructed the Eiffel Tower, ended slavery in America, and revived the Olympic Games. Why do some people live longer than others? Well, life choices clearly play into it a lot, but genetics also have a pretty big role. Something we just don't have much control over. Sometimes survival is kind of unfairly tied to luck. So why don't we look at one of the luckiest characters in all of comics, Wolverine. If anybody won the genetic jackpot, it was this guy. Sure, maybe you have a great immune system. Maybe there's no trace of heart problems anywhere in your family. Maybe you have what it takes to reach 117 years old, but James Logan Howlett has us all beat because he was born with the X gene. A rare anomaly on the 23rd chromosome of his genetic makeup that allows his body to behave differently from ours. You all know the story, he heals. Fast. From everything. In fact, he's so good at healing that he was born in the 1800s just like Emma Morano, but still preceded her by at least 14 years, and is looking great for his age. He's barely slowed down at all. It's not surprising that some people wonder, can Wolverine die? Well, healing might do a number on aging, but it doesn't make you invincible. It's the adamantium coating around his bones that does that. For anyone who doesn't know, those iconic metal claws he has are pure bone underneath. Just like the rest of his skeleton was before he took part in a secret government program that encased it in one of the most indestructible materials in existence. And when asking if he can die, this is important, because Charles Xavier, one of Wolverine's most trusted friends and mentors, has heavily suggested in the past that Wolverine's healing factor is tied to his brain. Which is safe and sound inside an adamantium skull. If it weren't for that metal, Wolverine could die by getting his brain scrambled, but good luck breaking through. I could only find 4 people who ever managed to pull it off, and they all kind of cheated. I know what you're thinking, and no, it's not enough to just shoot Wolverine through one of his eye sockets. His brain has healed from damages in the past. Assuming he's in his prime, you'd have to just totally destroy that thing to stop him. With a healing factor that hides its only weakness inside an indestructible sphere, Wolverine can come back from almost anything. One time he was at ground zero during a city-leveling explosion, every cell of his outer body was annihilated, and he still came back. Contrary to what the movies might tell you, adamantium is extremely resistant to heat. Since the skull only has so many openings, part of his brain somehow managed to survive and heal everything. Ew. From this and a few other examples, we can pretty much confirm that as long as a base structure is there, Wolverine's brain can spatially determine where new cells need to grow and produce them. It starts with the brainstem, latches onto the vertebral column to form a spinal cord, follows that to branch all the way throughout the skeletal structure, repairs the nervous system, regrows muscle from there, and, well, you get the picture. Skeletons are like one big blueprint for the body. And just as we can use them to determine what creatures that have been dead for ages used to look like, Wolverine's brain can use his skeleton to determine what he used to look like. So is it really fair to say he can die if it takes something like this to kill him? I mean, Wolverine doesn't have to be afraid of you, or me, or bombs, or illness, or predators, or really anything most people are afraid of. Unless you're aquaphobic. Consider this, if your entire skeleton was coated in metal, how good a swimmer do you think you'd be? You'd sink like a rock, and Wolverine knows this. The average human skeleton comprises about 15% of his or her body weight. Comparatively, Wolverine's skeleton comprises about 45% of his. In his own words, it's like swimming with an anvil on your back. And that's a serious problem, because in comic book canon, Wolverine and others have admitted and demonstrated that drowning can definitely kill him. And that makes a lot of sense, if you know how drowning works. When a human being, mutant superhero, or anything with lungs spends enough time underwater, their alveoli runs out of air, so there's no oxygen to pass through to the surrounding capillaries and be delivered through the body by red blood cells. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, but oxygen is extremely important to just about everything you do. Your cells need that oxygen delivered to them to break down the glucose you get from food. And that ultimately results in the release of energy that's carried to whatever cell function is needed by ATP. Or in other words, the reason your cells, the things that make up you, do anything is because of a chemical reaction that requires oxygen. And the same goes for Wolverine. Enough time without oxygen and all his cells will begin to die. He'll eventually lose consciousness and breathe in water, which will fill his lungs and make it difficult for air to get in even if he's rescued. In a matter of minutes, his brain will shut down, and increased stress on the heart will cause cardiac arrest. With his brain dead, his heart stopped, his cells starved, and water in his lungs, he can't heal from that. If he could, that wouldn't be a healing factor. It would be magic. Unfortunately for Wolverine, testimonies from people who have nearly drowned seem to indicate it's one of the least enjoyable ways to die ever. Stories recount last-minute feelings of intense panic, hopelessness, fear. But for Wolverine, there's actually another way to die that's arguably worse. Old age. Yes, at first glance it might sound silly to think someone over 130 years old could just get too old, but as you'll notice in a lot of future storylines, including the Logan movie, Wolverine isn't immortal. He just ages a lot slower than everybody else. It's the healing factor again. From birth to about the age of 18, the newly formed cells in the average person's body tend to consistently outnumber the dying cells. Then once we're done growing, the new cells and the dying cells tend to balance each other out. But at about the age of 25, our bodies begin to change. Everybody starts dying. Sorry to suddenly hit you with this news if you're over 25, but your old cells have started dying faster than new ones are born. Your metabolism has begun to slow. Your cognitive skills too. Muscles begin to shrink at the age of 30, your eyes start adjusting slower at 40, and Wolverine's healing factor is compensating for all of this. The reason Wolverine looks so young is because his body is constantly healing the most common injury of all: age. And the comics have made it very clear that healing factors can't keep up with that forever. Ever since Wolverine passed that ripe age of 25, his body has been shutting down just like everyone else's. And as he continues to grow older, he'll have a harder time healing from more traditional wounds because his healing factor will be too busy compensating for the fact that his body is only naturally producing like 10% of the cells he needs to stay alive. It's a power that's destined to weaken. For the sake of this video, I actually did do the math comparing Wolverine's biological age to his chronological age, and using this story, Wolverine the End, wherein he's listed as 210 years old, I was able to deduce that he's probably aging roughly 1 biological year for every 7.5 chronological years. Meaning, if he had the lifespan of an average healthy Canadian, Wolverine would live to be about 584.3 years old before his age overwhelmed his healing factor completely and he passed away from natural causes. And that is truly the most inevitable and painful way for Wolverine to die. Sure, he might not drown, and his brain is pretty safe from almost anything else inside that skull. But Logan has been an outcast most of his life, and he's already displaced across a solid century and then some. When he's with the X-Men, or at least Charles Xavier, Jean Grey, Laura Kinney, he has a family. Could there really be a worse fate than outliving everyone? At the beginning of this video, I suggested that survival might be kind of tied to luck. But maybe we're lucky not to live 584 years. Maybe life is important because it's short. No matter how well primed your genetics might be for what you encounter, you and I will never see the year 2470. In fact, we'll miss that entire century. And the century before that, and the century before that. We don't have an adamantium shell to protect us from danger, or a healing factor that will let us recover from anything life throws at us. And maybe that's why living is a real challenge. It's about trying to cram as many precious memories and good deeds and hopeful moments as you can into whatever short amount of time you've been allotted. The answer to this video's question is yes, Wolverine can die. We can all die. But maybe that's exactly why we live. Oh, and by the way, before anyone says anything, yes, I know about the comic in which Wolverine regenerates from a single drop of blood. But that only happened because the drop landed on the Crystal of Ultimate Vision, an artifact with nigh infinite power. Regenerating from a single cell is more up Deadpool's alley, really. I actually made a video about that quite some time ago if you're interested in seeing it. And if you're going to stick around my channel anyway, why not click on that subscribe button and ring the bell to become part of the notification squad? Not a lot of people realize this, but I actually try to respond to as many comments as I can within the first few minutes of a video being posted. So who knows, if you got here early, maybe we can have a chat in the comment section for a little bit. Just thought I'd offer. But honestly, the fact you watched the video all the way through is support enough. Thank you. You can also catch me on my Facebook and Twitter pages. Every single person to click the like and or follow button is rewarded with a satisfying clicking sound. As for everything else, we're getting pretty close to 200,000 subscribers. If you guys think I should do something special for the occasion, please let me know. I'll see what I can work out. But right now, I've got a lot of DC reading to do for our next episode. Stay tuned.